Okay, so swaps, when I say swap, what you need to think of is series of cash flows. Okay, series of cash flows on periodic dates over a span. This example of this would be every 3 months. This over a span of time can be 9 months total. That means every 3 months there will be an exchange. Okay, every 3 months there'll be an exchange. Of course, I think here I've put 4, so I'll just change this to 12 months, right? There's a quarter over here. This is 3, 3, 3, and 3, and this is where the swap ends. Okay. So the length, by the way, whenever you see maturity is something that's used with fixed income. When you see the word tenor or maturity, it's the same thing, but tenor is a word that's used with swap because it's a period. Maturity sounds like there's some principal payment towards the end, but in swaps there's no principal payment, right? You generally have something called a notional principal. Okay, you have something called a notional principal. So the easiest swap to understand, and what all books, every book in finance starts with, is plain vanilla interest rate swap. Okay, so there are multiple terms over here. So we'll go with the main term first. The subject is interest rate, right? So you know that there's some R and you're swapping that R, and it's plain vanilla. That means it's bland, it's simple. Let's not call it bland because I like the flavor. So I'll call it simple. Okay. So what this swap means is this. So we'll just draw a 2-period timeline to make it simple. Don't want to extend that. Right. So there's plain vanilla and interest rate swap. So you have party A and B. A will be a fixed rate payer. I mean, it can be the other way as well. And B will be the floating rate. If you notice, I didn't write the word after that because I wanted to put it in another color. Payer, floating rate payer. The reason I put that in another color is a fixed rate payer, vice versa. That means if A and B get into a contract, one person agrees to pay a fixed amount and the other person agrees to pay a floating amount, right? It's in this case, we said interest rate. So let's take an example. Let's say A gets into a contract and says, I am going to pay 5%. B will come in and say, I'm going to pay LIBOR, London Bank, London Interbank offering rate. We've done that, right? So based on what the LIBOR is, you exchange cash flows, right? So I'll get into the swap agreement over here. The interesting part about swaps is that the payment is made here or here. Option is a right. It means that it's a contingency claim. Options have something called X, which is exercise price. Why do you need an exercise price? Because options are based on this exercise price. Options based on this exercise price. Why? So when I'm saying that, hey, you know what? If something crosses a particular level, let's say $100 again. So if I'm saying that if it crosses this, then I win. If it stays till here, then you win. Right? So if you notice, there are 2 levels that you're playing with over here. So up to here, seller wins. Beyond here, buyer wins, right? But
Yeah.
you can also have options the other way around, right? You can also say up to here,
Mm.
seller wins, and from here, the buyer wins. How is this possible? When a stock price goes down, a buyer wins. This buyer is betting on a contingency, correct? I
Mm.
can bet. What is contingency? It's a particular condition, right? So, how many conditions are there? Either the stock goes up or the stock goes down. So, I
Yeah.
can bet on either contingency. That
Mm.
means for the up condition, there's a buyer and a seller. And for the down condition,
This is a
there's a
buy.
buyer and a seller.
Mm.
This up condition is called call option. The down condition is called put option. Remember is buyer pays a premium. Seller receives the premium, right? Now, when I talk about options, there are two kinds of options, American and European. European options are exercised on a particular date, right? You can't exercise it whenever you like. So, if I say 30th March, it has to be exercised on a specific date. American options, on the other hand, can be anytime on or before.
Okay.
Okay, CDS, credit. What's a credit default swap? You look at the two words, credit and default. Credit is what? Debt, right? Some sort of a debt. So it's a bond or a debt or whatever it is, right?
Mm.
Default is things like downgrade. Downgrade is not a default, but a downgrade is basically a step down. And a default is, I mean, I don't think I need to say what a default is, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
a credit default swap is if A buys a CDS, essentially what A is saying is if there is a downgrade or a default, if downgrade or a default, the other party must pay. The other party here would be B. It can be any B. That was the problem with the crisis of 2008. There were too many of these. So B was a random counterparty. Okay. Call option PNL. This is quite a popular diagram. You might have seen it online as well. Okay. Let me explain this diagram to you. So initially, when you start an option, actually, you know what? Just mute yourself. I'll explain this whole thing and then we can. Okay. Initially, when I'm buying a call option, right? For the buyer of the option. So first we'll talk about the buyer. The buyer pays a premium. This is PNL. So if the buyer pays a premium, the buyer is negative, right? Initially. So at the buyer pays, this is the premium amount. Right? Now, here there are different strike prices, right? There are initially this guy is at loss, but let's say that this is the strike price. Okay, this is the strike price. So strike price, imagine that there's a strike price over here. Each time this option moves closer to the strike price, this guy keeps getting profit, right? So theoretically, he can get infinite profit, right? So a call option buyer can get infinite profit. Same thing if I look at a seller. If I look at a seller gets a premium. The seller starts losing. Initially, there's a gain. This is the collected premium. Okay. And as and when the stock price keeps going up, don't get confused with this. Remember that on the X and Y axis, this is PNL, right? Keep that in mind. As and when the stock price keeps increasing, so X axis is representing that increase. There's a loss. Whereas when it increases here for the call option buyer, it's a profit. The same thing if I take it into a put option, right? Again, remember that these are strike prices, right? These are prices. I'm just randomly marking this. This is basically strike price plus the premium, right? In the put option case, this is not a plus. it will be a minus. Why? Now, if there's a put option buyer, I'll talk about the put option seller first. Let's talk about the put option seller. We'll use red. Okay. Now, put option seller gets a premium initially, and if the stock price keeps decreasing, it goes into loss. So each time the stock price goes down, the seller keeps losing. The seller keeps losing till it hits zero. So this is the loss. But if the stock price keeps rising, obviously the put option seller wins, right? Because the seller of a put option has bet on a rise. The buyer of the put option has bet on a fall. The buyer keeps profiting if the stock price keeps going down. Remember, the x-axis represents the stock price. So I'll just put that also over there. Stock price. And stock price is an example. This can also be commodity, currency, whatever it is, right? So the profit is if it goes down. Buyer pays the premium. Profit if price increases, right? We'll wind up with the law of one price. The law of one price is used in valuing derivatives. Okay. What this means is that, or what this states is that, whenever I buy, sell, right, arbitrage shouldn't be possible. Valuing derivatives, it's an anti-arbitrage property. Two portfolios, if they have similar cash flows, then they should have the same price. Else, you can buy one, sell the other. Remember, these are the same. If they have similar cash flows, if you buy one and sell the other, if they should have the same price. If they don't have the same price, if you buy one and sell the other, you can make a riskless profit, right? Because they have different cash flows. You can buy the cheaper one and sell the more expensive one, right? If they have similar cash flows. And to extend this, just add properties of cash flows also. I mean, this is the value that you determine. That needs to be the same.